Conor Benn versus Chris Eubank Jr. is finally being made. Both guys have signed on the dotted line, and it's due to take place on the first Ring Magazine event on the 26th of April in London. And this is a fight I'm really excited about. I was excited 2 years ago when it was meant to happen, but 2 years down the line, and there's even more bad blood now, I can't wait. And for me, I was a fan of both the parents because their rivalry was some of the best rivalry in British boxing. And like I say, the history runs deep. The dads, Chris Eubank Sr. and Nigel Benn, two huge characters, larger than life, and so opposite, and that's why they work so well. Chris was a real showman, with an air of arrogance. He loved the attention, whereas Nigel Benn, the Dark Destroyer, was all business, and he was real mean. Completely different characters, but that's why it works so beautifully. The rivalry for those two was no joke. They really hate each other, especially from Nigel. He hated everything about Eubanks, the way he walked, the way he talked. His arrogance just got really underneath his skin. He absolutely hated him.
I come up the hard way. I didn't
prove myself, boy.
You had your time. Let's have some parliamentary procedure here, all right?
Oh, God.
And Chris Eubank Sr. is a bit like Marmite. You either love him or you hate him. Me personally, I loved him. I loved his ring walks. I loved the way he talked. He's just so interesting. I mean, he's one of a kind. And besides that, the two of them could really fight. If you haven't seen the fights, I strongly suggest you go and check it out because they were great fighters. The beauty of this fight, the older generation that followed the dads will be interested in this fight, so I think it's great. And that's what you want. You want boxing to be appealing to a wider audience. Let's just take a brief look at the dads. Look at the way Chris just struts over. Serious swagger. This guy knows how to entertain. Completely different. Look at them. Nigel Benn is so serious. Eubanks is just standing there posing. Makes me laugh. You can see the way Chris went on. How he got under Nigel's skin. So confident. I just love the way Eubanks moves. He's got such a unique style. He's a real showman. Despite being a showman, he could really fight. He could really back it up. Oh. Good shots there from both, and these guys know how to inside fight. And Nigel really puts everything into his shots. But saying that, both guys do. Both of them are punchers. Oh. Fighters from that era really go to war, like their life depends on it. Different breed. This is quite often when Nigel Benn was dangerous. When he was pinned against the ropes, he would bob and weave and then come back with absolute haymakers. One thing's for sure, the Suns have got a lot to live up to. They've got some serious shoes to fill. In that fight, Chris wins, stopping Nigel Benn in round 9. And they do have a rematch, I think 3 years later, and it's a draw. I don't think Nigel Benn ever gets over it. He never got his revenge. Anyway, getting back to the Suns, both of the careers have lost momentum for very different reasons, but either way, things haven't gone to plan. Chris's career started well, very promising, but when he got to the next level and he fought the likes of Billy Joe Saunders and George Groves, he lost. He was good enough to compete at that level, but not good enough to win. Fast forward the clock to more recent years, when he stepped up again and fought Liam Smith, he got knocked out. And that's down to inactivity. He wasn't progressing the way he should have been. Don't get me wrong, because I don't want to take it away from Liam Smith, because he's a great fighter. But Chris not being active, going up and down in weight, makes it harder to make weight, and essentially affects your punch resistance. And Chris was known, just like his dad, for having a great chin. But if you skip the grind, this is what happens. Conor's career also started well. He didn't seem to be much of a puncher early on, but he did develop some power from somewhere. And then he did fail a drugs test, which I'm not going to get into too much. I'll leave the comment section to do that. As we know, he got banned for 2 years, but he's got his license back now, so what can I say? During the ban, Conor did have a few fights over in America. I think the last one was the start of last year. It was against Peter Dobson. And I can remember not really being that impressed. He probably wasn't performing his best. Because of the ban, the pressure was on. Because the critics were out in force. Or maybe it was because he didn't have that drug in his system. I don't know. Regardless, I can't remember being impressed. So let's take a quick look. Ben's got such an aggressive style, he really commits with every shot. Just like his dad, and as they say, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. The problem is, if he misses, he's wide open to be hit, and I do question his defence. I'm not too sure about this Dobson's ambition, but when he lets his hands go, he is getting through, and I get the impression he is holding back. Oh, Conor gets nailed there, definitely shook, and he holds on. You can see at times that Conor switches off. You can't do that in this business, especially not with low hands. Yeah, you can see this Dobson's really having a go. Sometimes these guys aren't there to win, they're just there to get paid. Oh, nails Conor again with the overhand right. He just seems to switch off. When Conor fights Chris, he can't be switching off like that against him. Conor is explosive when he lets his hands go, but it's not really having the desired effect on Dobson. You know, ever since the ban, he doesn't look quite the same puncher. Oh, Conor gets caught with an uppercut there and the overhand right. One thing's for sure, he's always going to be in exciting fights. I think we've seen enough, and that was how I remember it. I'm not overly impressed. Yes, he's explosive, fast hands, but he gets hit far too much for my liking. You know, that was at 150, and he couldn't really put a dent in him, put a dent in Dobson, and now he's going to be fighting at 160 against Chris. So I'm just not sure. I was out in Saudi with a pain game when Chris last fought against Kamil Seremata. And to be honest, I wasn't that impressed with him either. Let's take a quick look at his fight. That was nice there. A textbook, fast 1-2, simple boxing. Let's take another look. Yeah, that was beautiful. That's great boxing, keeping it simple, because sometimes that's all you need. Oh, Seremata returns the favour. And Chris was definitely hurt there. That shook him to his boots. I remember in Saudi, Chris was training in a sweatsuit trying to make weight. He was definitely very tight at the weight. And that's where you see his punch resistance isn't great. Oh, lovely combination there from Chris. Right hook to the body, then he comes over the top with the right hand. Some lovely combinations there from Chris. He does throw a lovely uppercut. I've got to admit, watching this back, Chris's punch selection is great. And he's always thrown beautiful uppercuts, which set up a lovely overhand right. Oh, that was a slashing shot of the body. A horrible shot, and they really hurt. Yeah, I think it's all over here. Yep, they wave it off. I've got to say, I'm more impressed watching it back than what I can remember watching it live in Riyadh. But at the same time, I'm not too sure about the level of resistance in Kamil Seremata. I said this earlier, but Chris did look tight at the weight. I remember seeing him thinking, your skin looks thin. You look like a bodybuilder. You could see every vein. It didn't look great. This fight is made at 160, at middleweight. And I also think there might be a rehydration clause, which isn't great for Chris if he is tight at the weight. Chris had called Eddie Hearn and Conor rats for making a rehydration clause. To be honest, I don't like rehydration clauses. They're dangerous. I don't like the idea of fighters not being able to fully rehydrate. You need enough fluid in the body to protect your organs and around the head to protect your brain. It's just stupid. It's one of those where I'm not sure, because Conor's given a lot of weight away and he's at a huge disadvantage, but at the same time, it's his choice to move up in weight, and believe it or not, it's probably better to go up in weight than it is to come down. I do also question Chris's motivation, because you see him living the high life, out on yachts, nice cars, living the good life. And I also heard he makes good money playing poker. And then when I see him doing interviews saying that he doesn't really follow boxing, it's a strange one. Whereas Conor is the complete opposite. You can tell he's motivated and extremely hungry. And I also think he lives the life. And he's also got, like his dad, that chip on his shoulder where it's him against the world. I seen an interview with Eddie Hearn, and he said when the fight was meant to happen 2 years ago, it was the quickest selling fight at the O2. And now with the bad blood, it's going to be even bigger. There's so much history in this fight, so much at stake, bragging rights. Whoever loses, I wouldn't want to be them. But I do think there'll be a rematch. Closer to the time, I'll be doing a prediction video. Had it been a few years ago, I probably would have chose Chris Eubank Jr. But since then, a lot has changed. Let me know what you think, and don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.